Why is it that we need to know about ourselves? Why should one, give an effort, try to learn who they are? If life is already pleasant, happy, so called happy, if everything is going fine, what is the need for one to know themselves? One can argue that they already know themselves. They know who they are. They know what they need, and there isn't really like an urgency or uh, let's call it incentive. There isn't any incentive to actually go into or get into the depths of why we should do it. I know what I want to achieve. I know what my life is going to look like in another 5 years. I already have this set plan in my head of what I'm going to do in future. So why should I even introspect, or why should I even bother with this exercise of knowing about myself? I already know who I am. I know what I want to do. I know the things that I want to uh, sort of achieve later on in my life. I already know who I am. This knowing myself business is really isn't for me. But then if we look at it, do things really go the way we plan them to? Can you really bend, shape, give form to life according to your own desires? And these are those desires that one hasn't really gone into also. It is something that we have picked up from the environment. We saw people doing some things, we were told to achieve this and this. There were some marks that were put, there were some milestones that were put forward as uh, things to reach to or things to acquire, and then we have said, okay, we have rolled up our sleeves, and then we have gone into without really actually asking, how is this milestone really going to help me? How is this measure of success that I have set for myself, what it is actually going to do? I just have a vague idea, or at least a sort of a picture in my head that tells me, once I've got all of this that is in my list, I would be okay. Rather, I would be fantastic. And then I put my head down and then begin to achieve all of those things. But if we are really honest with ourselves, does that so called achievement really fulfill us from within? Because if we were already fulfilled from within, we wouldn't have set these milestones or parameters of success that we have set in our head and then gone on to achieve them. So the first question would actually be why I am unfulfilled in the first place, or why I need to seek out things to assure myself, to why I need to seek out things that are life affirming, that would give me a sort of calm or peace that I expect them to give me. Who is within me who is actually unfulfilled? That requires a certain completeness, and these measures of success, I think, would give me that completeness. Is that the thing? We fundamentally don't know why we are actually unfulfilled, or why we are actually incomplete, and why we are actually a fragment that is always seeking a whole for to fulfill itself. Being a fragment within, we are really looking outward, or we are really looking for things in our environment to give that fragment a certain fulfillment, a certain fulfillment. Can something which is actually fragmented in the first place, no matter what anything outside of it promises, if its fundamental nature is to be a fragment, can the thing outside of it defragment it? Can the thing outside of it actually complete it, make it whole? And so that's why it becomes an imperative to understand who we are, to sort of go into what is it that gives us this perpetual feeling of incompleteness. What is it that keeps us disturbed, to be not at peace within ourselves? We may find moments of pleasures that are inside in our head as memory, and we think, okay, these were the moments that sort of kept me at peace, they gave me pleasure. But then they were really just moments, they were just some spans of times that we feel sort of relaxed, and then we think, okay, these might be the things that I need to do more and more, and probably this would give me that fulfillment that I'm seeking for, because through in my memory, with the assessment of my memory, I'm realizing that this gave me that peace that I was looking for. And so our search basically becomes an exercise in looking for pleasure, we set out to just seek pleasure. Being in pain ourselves, we think pleasure is what will actually fulfill us. Is that the thing? We are fundamentally in pain or in angst within ourselves, and then we seek to fulfill ourselves through pleasures. There is no actual meaningful fulfillment that ever happens. The whole exercise is between these two poles. From pleasure, from pain, being in pain, we seek out pleasure. Then we are again bored of it. Then we seek out another kind of pleasure. And then we are again bored of it. And then we go on to some other kind of pleasure. And thus, is that the kind of life that we are actually living? Hopping on from one pleasure to another, from one pleasure to another, thinking that probably this would fulfill us, or either that thing would fulfill us, or probably that experience might give me that fulfillment, or this act here, or this person there, or this possession here would give me that final anchor that I really need in my life, that would complete me, that would make me whole. Is that who we really are? Individuals who are perpetually seeking pleasure from their already miserable, from their innately miserable state. What is behind this state of misery that we find ourselves in? And we build this network of escapes that promise us to bring ourselves out of that misery. How did this come about? What was that point that we became so unhappy, so not comfortable with ourselves, so disturbed, that we are sort of programmed to just seek for pleasure? And do we have an actual part in it to play? Are we the cause of our own misery? Are we the cause of the present state that we find ourselves in? A certain plan that we have created in our head, being miserable, that promises us to get ourselves out of this state. Who gave us this plan? Who was that entity that decided that if all these check marks are sort of done in life, then probably I would not be as miserable as I am currently? What is in us that latched on to all these ideas that were placed in front of us, that promised a fulfilling life, that promised a certain anchor, a groundedness within our characters, within ourselves? Is separation the cause of it? We separate ourselves from the environment we are in, and we think of ourselves as an individual entity who would then go out in the world, who would then go out and meet people, who would then study some things, who would then be at a certain place, and then finally be rested in that place, in that person, in that study. Is this separation that the cause for this state that we are in? That we think of ourselves as a fragmented, as a different entity from the environment it lives in, and then so begins the journey to fulfill ourselves within that environment, us being a separate entity, and then there is a world around it, and then this entity goes out to every corner of this world, to every alley, to every shop, in the hope that something would give it that resting place, that resting secret, if we can call it, that would finally bring them to peace. This is the sort of mental map that we do actually create, that we are someone, that we are this separate being born in a certain time, and its environment would sort of help him or her to fulfill itself. When did that separation actually took place?